my pretties, it's Lion Queen here. Today I'm going to be talking about this one episode of Rugrats that honestly was not really traumatizing, but pretty much nightmare fuel. And you're going to find out why. Now, basically, we all know this show, Rugrats. Now, if you remember, I talked about the dark episode of Arthur where Arthur basically, tackled the subject matter of tragedies, well, about the school fire, and it was aired, after the September 11th attacks. Well, today in this episode, I'm going to be talking about one episode of Rugrats that literally was nightmare fuel, but I honestly, literally was traumatized from this episode when I first saw it when I was a kid. And yeah, today I'm going to be talking about this episode called Angelica's Worst Nightmare. This happened to be one of the most creepy, but a little bit but a bit disturbing and dark episode of the show. We all know this show Rugrats that was made in the 90s. Most kids who have watched this episode were young in the 90s. Even if it was shown on reruns in the 2000s, maybe you kids might have remembered this episode. Now, this episode, which is pretty much called Angelica's Worst Nightmare. It aired on March 13th, 1994, which of course it was around the mid 90s. Rugrats had started becoming a very popular show on Nickelodeon in the 1990s since 1991, and it had been popular. And of course, the reboot of it is not that good. So I'm going to be talking about the classic Rugrats. I grew up watching it as a kid, and most of you guys probably remember this character, like Angelica and stuff. But this episode's dedicated to Angelica, and it is pretty much a episode from season 3. So it's a season 3 episode. So I am going to go ahead and talk about this episode. So yeah. I know there is a YouTuber called Jordan Fringe who also did talk about this episode. So I'm basically going to go ahead and, explain what the plot of this episode is. If you don't want any spoilers, I highly suggest you click off this video right now. But yeah, most of you guys who grew up in the 90s probably remember this episode, but let's start there. We all know Angelica, who is the daughter of Charlotte and Drew Pickles, the only daughter of the Pickles family from Drew's side. We all know Stu and Diddy had, and well, Dee Dee had two sons, Dill and Tommy, but this episode aired before her Dill was born. So Dill did not exist at this time, but Tommy did. So basically, Angelica really likes being the only child. However, a possible set status over after taking an at-home pregnancy test. Now, eventually, Charlotte and Drew become overjoyed, saying that they were going to have another baby while making an official appointment to make sure the doctors have the official test done. Of course, they tell Angelica about it the next day, but Angelica just thinks it's over a joke when it literally wasn't because they weren't laughing or anything. They were serious about it. Honestly, they tell her that they really wanted to are going to have another baby. But of course, yeah, they basically were, trying to prepare for the new baby. And of course, Angelica tries to get her parents to take her to the toy store, but they unfortunately just don't have time. And honestly, at Tommy's house, she tells him that her friend is going to be having a sibling when it's really her. The reason why that Angelica doesn't want to tell Tommy the truth that it was her that was getting a younger brother or sister, because I think Angelica, just feared that she's not going to be, having any more attention in that when if Charlotte and Drew had their baby. Of course, this episode doesn't seem too dark until later on, but it does seem to, have a point end episode and basically has like a little bit of a plot explaining, why Angelica is just having a fear. I mean, her fear of, is, if if Drew and Charlotte were to have another child, she's just afraid that, nobody is going to have time for her anymore and stuff. I mean, well, it is true that some people do, have most of their attention to the babies, even parents when their younger sister, when their their first child is going to have another sibling, but of course there's some coping mechanisms that can help them understand that just because they love the new baby and the new baby's getting attention, that does not mean they will not love their old child anymore. So basically, Dee Dee steps in and tells Tommy that Angelica is going to be having a new sibling because Charlotte is pregnant. So, of course, that's when she explains to her that her parents will be far too busy for anything else when the new baby comes. But yeah, honestly, that's just honestly making Angelica feel very upset, kind of like feeling down and stuff. So basically, she tries to ask her mom to not have the baby, but Charlotte says when the baby comes, it comes, and there's nothing that can be done about it. Eventually, this is when Angelica tries to call Dr. Daniel Prescott, a therapist, and she tells him that she thinks her mother's having a new baby is a bad idea, and she thinks that her parents won't have any time for her. But he tells her that she needs to think about others and not to be so selfish. Of course, Angelica, being the brat bitch she is, she does not listen. So, of course, at the dinner table, that's when Drew and Charlotte do not seem to pay any attention to her and only do so when she tells them about her food. They continue to discuss where the baby will sleep in her room. She mimics on how they can't stop thinking about the baby. She falls asleep on her bed saying, "Babies, who needs them?" That's when the dark part comes in, and this is when Angelica has a really horrible nightmare. So, as a kid, when I watched this nightmare part, honestly, I was really creeped out, and some kids were even traumatized because of that. I mean, this episode was not banned or anything as far as I'm concerned, but I could be wrong because I have not watched this in a very long time. So basically, in the dream, Angelica finds out that the baby had already been born and are in her parent and the parents in his room. She tries to talk to them, but they act like she's not even there and they don't recognize her. And then that's when Drew remembers that she's the old kid, meaning that they had forgot about her and her name. So that's when he and Charlotte leave so they could call the newspaper about their new baby. We all know Charlotte's like a workaholic. I mean, Charlotte's like always on her phone 24/7. If you guys remember seeing her on the phone 24/7, yeah, you will get what I mean. I mean, personally, the nightmare sequence was pretty much nightmare fueling of Rugrats, and honestly, I was really freaked out about that nightmare scene when I was a kid. But watching it for the first time in years, I honestly was not as scared of it as I was back then. However, though, when they leave, Angelica goes to see the new baby, and this is when the new baby begins to speak in a male voice, which, babies don't normally talk until they're in their toddler years. So, they'll have the baby have a speak in a man's voice that honestly is inaccurate for how babies should talk and stuff. Of course, he tells Angelica that he's the new baby and she's the old baby, and that the house and their parents belong to him now. That's when Angelica has the one chance to leave home. But of course, Angelica tries to run to her mother to tell her that the baby talked and threatened her. Of course, Charlotte tells her that the baby is talking is impossible. Drew steps in, telling Charlotte that Angelica's room is perfect for the new baby. So, yeah. I mean, that's when Charlotte tells Angelica that they were going to give the baby all of her toys. She tells Angelica that she'll sleep in the laundry room and to do the laundry. So, of course, then for them to be too busy to make Angelica dinner, they only gave her a small slice of cheese. So, of course, that's when Angelica becomes all emotional, upset, forgotten, heartbroken, shocked, devastated, etc. But of course, she believes that her parents don't care about her anymore and they only care about the new baby. But that's when her baby brother, who appeared to have grown taller than her, barges in and says that he has already told her to leave home. So that's when he pretty much tries to run out of the house. But of course, though, in this story, though that's when her baby brother picks up the car, and then yeah, he basically eats Angelica in the story, well, in the dream. Honestly, when she wakes up and from a nightmare, Drew comes in and Angelica tells him about the dream, which she ended up being forgotten. She gets really upset, And, she just thinks, when the new baby arrives, she's not going to be, forgotten and stuff. She honestly was really, really upset, and honestly, she really liked being the only child. I can honestly tell Angelica didn't want a sibling or anything. She just wanted to be an only child. I mean, I have a brother, so I mean, my brother can be a pain in the ass at times, especially when he does stuff that I did not like, or doesn't listen to me, or decides to annoy me. I mean, everybody has their weak points when it comes to having siblings. I mean, some people who are only child wish they had a sibling. But I mean, that's pretty much how people would think and feel, and depends on how people both think. So, Drew then reassures Angelica that she will not be forgotten, even if she had another sibling, and she will always be cared and loved for. She'll simply be always and forever their only child. But of course, that's when the next day shows up, when Drew and Charlotte reveal to Angelica that Charlotte's doctor told them that Charlotte isn't really pregnant, so they're not going to have another baby, at least not now. Angelica was just acting like she was hoping to have another sibling, but she is secretly pleased to remain the only child. Now, this episode was honestly one of the most scariest, creepiest episode I've ever watched. And honestly, I can definitely say right now that it was definitely really something when it came to it. But like them, that with all being said. However, there is some, mentions and some stuff that I did not know, and some of you guys may not know. I'm not going to mention every single one of them, but some of you guys probably might have remembered this if you remember this episode. Angelica, of course, she mentions her love for Gilligan's Island, which honestly was a show that was previously mentioned in Angelica Runs Away. However, when Angelica falls asleep, her bedroom light is on, her door is open, and she's above the bed covers. When Drew comes in to wake her out of her nightmare, the lights are off and her door is closed, but is now under the covers. So that's honestly some stuff that I did not even know. However, this episode is similar to Pickles versus Pickles because the main plot of both episodes is a nightmare experienced by a character. Honestly, that was honestly really something. Of course, there was a lot of stuff that does happen, especially with Charlotte. Like, for a couple reasons. Assuming that Charlotte was never actually pregnant in the first place, there are, however, a couple theories as to why she wasn't pregnant. In the first place, there are a couple reasons. Like, for example, she may have done a phantom pregnancy in which a woman exhibits pregnancy like symptoms when she's not actually pregnant. A real phantom pregnancy tends to be more common in animals than humans. Eh, in humans, and it does tend to be more psychological than physical. However, Charlotte could have simply misread or done the at home test incorrectly, which resulted in a false positive, which is a possibility. Charlotte told Drew that if the results turned out blue, then she would mean she was pregnant. Again, I mean, it's entirely possible that the test results actually said blue means you're not pregnant, but Charlotte simply got mixed up maybe when reading the results. That is quite possible because we all know Charlotte's always working and stuff, so. I mean, when she goes to one thing to another when working, and, she might have got maybe something mixed up because, she's always like working all the time. I mean, hell, if you even look in flashbacks of her, you could definitely see even when became a mom in one episode, she was still doing her job. I mean, she's like Wonder Woman 2.0, but Rugrats in 90s version, which honestly I thought that was really interesting. Charlotte was actually the most interesting character in the show, and I have to say she was like one of the most in really intriguing characters, but however interesting ones. However, though, whatever or not she had done the at home pregnancy test correctly, Charlotte could have realized that those tests weren't always totally accurate, since she did make an appointment with her doctor to have an official test done to see if she was pregnant. However, though, Charlotte could have gotten her period since women don't get their periods while pregnant, and a missed period is usually a common sign that a woman might be pregnant. Another common sign periods being late for women could be because they're stressed out or they're having health problems, etc. It's really possible, to be completely and utterly honest, because if Charlotte was actually pregnant in the first place, but later turned out not to be, she could have had a miscarriage, which possibly even in a chemical pregnancy. For those who don't know what a chemical pregnancy is, it is a very early miscarriage that happens before anything could be seen on an ultrasound, etc. So honestly, that does might be a possibility because a lot of people said she had a miscarriage, but it's not really said if that's actually true or not. However, though, this is one of the many times where Angelica's thankful for her status to be the only child. The only episodes where she actually expresses a desire to have another sibling are a few episodes such as The Stork and The Sister Act. Latter the episodes only being time where Angelica was generally saddened by the fact that she's an only child. Ironically, she ends up being the only child in the Rugrats series who remains the only child because, well, we all know that Tommy me gains a younger brother named Dill in the Rugrats movie. Chucky gets a new stepsister named Kimmy from an from a stepmother for of his named Kimmy's mom, of course, which however was pretty much later on from introduced in, well, Rugrats in Paris movie or something like that. Kira eventually Kimmy later gets a half sister named Kiki Gi Wantabe. And of course, we do know that Phil and Lil are actually fraternal twins. Susie, who eventually has two older brothers and an older sister named Edwin, Buster, and Alyssa. So this is the second appearance of Angelica's first toy car, being based off of a BMW during that era. For the first time, it requires a key to start the car instead of like a real car just pressing the gas pedal and etc. Then it did appear in appearance such as Runaway Angelica and stuff like that. So the morals of these episodes that honestly, despite the episode being dark halfway through, there are some good morals and good lessons for everybody, especially if you were an adult, kid, whatever. The morals of the story is your parents will still always love and care for you no matter what, even if you have, more than one sibling. Your parents will always, will never replace you with anybody else. Even if they have a new baby, they'll still love you no matter what. And the second moral is pregnancy tests can be wrong or inaccurate, which it does happen from time to time. However, though, while visiting this episode again as an adult, I can see how it's relatable in many ways when it came to, you Angelica. I mean, I honestly feel bad for Angelica, especially when she had the nightmare and that, because we all know Angelica is usually the brat of the Rugrats. Like, I mean, she's always been the only child. I mean, there's a possibility maybe since Charlotte and Drew had to put up with Angelica being bratty in the show, there is a good chunk of possibility that they probably just don't want to have another kid because they're maybe concerned that it might become bratty as Angelica, if not worse. But we all know Angelica has been the brat of Rugrats. Even in All Grown Up, she was still a brat. But however, though, I think she still is a brat in the newer series, but I don't really know because I don't really pay attention to the reboot of Rugrats. I honestly prefer the original. It was a lot better. The ones from the 90s were a lot better. I'm just so glad I came across this episode when I was a kid because honestly, this does have really good meanings and good morals. But this episode has a dark episode later on because, I mean, Rugrats had a fair share of, some dark episodes, but this one is definitely something that stood out to me and it kind of scared me a bit in the nightmare sequence. So, yeah. If there is another Rugrats episode that happens to be just as dark as this one, comment down below and let me know because I may consider taking a look at that one if that's the case. So, I guess with that being the case and that being said, what did you guys personally think of this story? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? well, not this story, but what did you think of this episode or the storyline behind it that I just explained? Did you enjoy this episode when you were a kid? Did it scare you as a kid or traumatize you? Did you not like it? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I am the Lion Queen. I want to thank you so much for watching today's video. And if you're new to my channel, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will not miss an upload. And as always, if you happen to be, around here and you want to go follow me on Twitter, feel free to follow me on Twitter, as link to that will be in the About page section. If you guys also want to go follow me besides Twitter, if you want to go follow me on another site such as DeviantArt, link to that will be in the About page section down below. If you also want to go check out my backup channel known as Miss Dark Shigo, link to that will also be in the About page section, so you guys can go and check that one out if you haven't. So, yeah, if I'm missing anything about this episode, please let me know what it is in the comments below, because I don't think I'm missing anything. But if I am, please let me know what it is. So I guess that's pretty much all I have to really say, but I'm going to say right now that I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments below. And also, if I'm missing something, let me know what it is. So I guess with that being said, I'll be seeing you all in the next video. Peace out, and like always, please roll the outro, because I'm out.